Admiral Kethavar stood tall on the bridge of his massive warship. The ship was called the Eternal Dominion, and it was the largest vessel in the Zephyrian fleet. Around him, hundreds of crew members worked at glowing control panels. The bridge was enormous, with curved walls that reached high above their heads. Everything was made of polished metal that reflected the blue light from their screens. Kethavar was proud of his fleet. 200 ships followed behind his flagship. Each ship was armed with the most powerful weapons in the galaxy: plasma cannons that could melt entire cities, particle beams that could cut through asteroids, fusion lances that burned hotter than stars. But most important of all, every ship had the best defense system ever created. The shields were everything. For 3,000 years, the Zephyrian hegemony had ruled this part of space because of their shield technology. The shields could stop any attack. They bent space itself to create barriers that no weapon could break through. Energy weapons simply bounced off them or got absorbed into nothing. "Sir, we are approaching the Sol system," reported his navigation officer. The officer's scales were bright green, showing excitement. All Zephyrians had scales instead of skin, and the colors changed with their emotions. Kethavar nodded. The Sol system was home to a young species called humans. According to their intelligence reports, humans had only learned to travel between stars 50 years ago. They were primitive. Their technology was crude. Their military was tiny compared to the mighty hegemony fleet. "What do our scouts report about human defenses?" Kethavar asked. His intelligence officer checked her datapad. 28 ships total, sir. Most appear to be converted cargo vessels and mining platforms. Their largest ship is barely half the size of our smallest cruiser. Kethavar almost laughed. 28 ships against 200. It was not even a fair fight. The humans would surrender quickly once they saw the size of his fleet. Most intelligent species did. "Their weapon systems?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. We detect no plasma cannons, no particle beam arrays, no fusion lances. Their ships appear to have some kind of long metal structures along their hulls, but we cannot determine their purpose." This puzzled Kethavar slightly. Every spacefaring civilization used energy weapons. Plasma was efficient. Particle beams were precise. Fusion lances had incredible range. What else could space warfare use? "Perhaps they have hidden their weapons inside their ships," suggested his tactical officer. "It does not matter," Kethavar replied. "Whatever primitive weapons they possess, our shields will stop them easily." The shields on his ships were the Mark 7 barrier generators, the most advanced defensive technology in known space. Each generator created 7 layers of quantum barriers around a ship. These barriers could absorb terawatts of energy without failing. They could redirect enemy fire harmlessly into subspace. They could even reflect attacks back at the enemy. No weapon in the galaxy could penetrate Mark 7 shields when they were properly configured. Kethavar had personally tested them against the most powerful weapons the hegemony possessed. The shields held against everything. "Sir, we are dropping out of hyperspace now," announced the navigation officer. The stars stopped streaking past the viewports. Normal space appeared around them. In the distance, a small yellow star burned quietly. Around it orbited several planets, including the blue-green world where humans lived. "Deploy the fleet in standard conquest formation," Kethavar ordered. "Activate all shields to maximum power." His 200 ships spread out in a vast line. Each vessel was a masterpiece of Zephyrian engineering. Sleek hulls covered in armor plating, weapon ports that glowed with ready energy, and surrounding each ship, the shimmer of active shields that bent light around their edges. "Sir, the human ships are moving to intercept us," reported his sensor operator. On the main display, 28 small dots appeared. They moved slowly compared to Zephyrian vessels. Their formation was strange, too. Instead of the elegant curves that most civilizations used, the humans formed a simple straight line. "Magnify the human vessels," Kethavar commanded. The display zoomed in to show the human ships clearly. Kethavar stared in surprise. These were not the graceful warships he expected. They looked like flying boxes, all flat surfaces and sharp angles. Their hulls were thick and heavy, like they were built to ram things instead of dance through space. But the strangest thing was those metal structures the intelligence officer had mentioned. Long cylindrical shapes ran along each ship's hull. They looked almost like rails, but that made no sense. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the humans," announced the communications officer. "Put it on screen." The display changed to show the bridge of a human ship. Everything looked cramped and utilitarian. No beautiful curves or artistic designs, just metal and function. In the center stood a human female with gray hair and serious eyes. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Navy," she said. Her voice was calm and steady. "You are in violation of human space. State your intentions." Kethvar was amused by her boldness. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian hegemony. You will surrender immediately and submit to our rule. Your people will be relocated to suitable agricultural worlds where they can serve the hegemony." The human admiral's expression did not change. "I'm afraid that's not acceptable. You have 28 ships. We have 200. You cannot hope to defeat us." "Numbers aren't everything, Admiral." Kethavar's amusement grew. "Your primitive energy weapons cannot penetrate our shields. This is not a battle you can win." Something strange happened then. The human admiral smiled slightly. "Energy weapons? I think there's been a misunderstanding, Admiral Kethvar. We don't use energy weapons." Before Kethvar could ask what she meant, his sensor operator called out urgently, "Sir, the human ships are rotating into attack position. I'm detecting massive power buildup in those cylindrical structures." "What kind of power buildup?" Kethvar demanded. It's not matching any known weapon signature, sir. The energy patterns are completely unfamiliar." Kethvar felt the first stirring of unease. In 3,000 years of conquest, the hegemony had encountered every type of space weapon imaginable. Plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion lances, gravity weapons, antimatter torpedoes, all energy-based, all stopped by their shields. "Sir, all human vessels have locked onto our ships," reported the tactical officer. "They appear ready to fire." "Let them," Kethvar said, pushing down his worry. "Our shields will protect us." All ships raise barriers to maximum power. Across his fleet, 200 Zephyrian warships activated their defensive systems. Space around each vessel shimmered as the quantum barriers came online, 7 layers of protection that could stop anything the galaxy could throw at them. The human ships finished their rotation. Those strange cylindrical structures were now pointed directly at the Zephyrian fleet. Power readings spiked dramatically across all human vessels. "Sir," his science officer said nervously, "the energy signatures still don't match anything in our database. Whatever they're preparing to fire, it's not like anything we've seen before." Kethvar gripped the arms of his command chair. For the first time in his long military career, he was facing the unknown. But it did not matter. The shields would hold. They always held. "Let them fire their mysterious weapons," he announced to his bridge crew. "They will learn that Zephyrian shields cannot be broken." The human ships completed their targeting solutions. In the silence of space, 28 primitive vessels prepared to face 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. It should have been a slaughter. Admiral Chen's final words echoed across the communication channel. "Fire." The human weapons fired with no visible flash or beam. Kethvar stared at his main display, waiting for the familiar sight of energy weapons streaking through space. Plasma bolts usually glowed bright blue. Particle beams created thin lines of light. Fusion lances burned like miniature suns. Instead, he saw nothing. "Sir, I'm detecting incoming projectiles," his sensor operator reported, confusion clear in his voice. "Velocity is—" "That cannot be correct. What is the velocity?" Kethvar demanded. 14% of light speed, sir, and still accelerating." Kethvar felt his scales shift to pale blue with shock. 14% of light speed was impossible for any physical object. Only energy could move that fast. But his sensors clearly showed solid masses approaching his fleet. "Mass readings?" he asked. "Approximately 50 kilograms each, sir." "Impact in 47 seconds, 50 kilograms." Kethavar's mind raced to understand what he was seeing. The humans had fired physical objects at his ships. Not energy weapons, but actual solid masses. But how could solid matter travel at such incredible speeds? "All ships maintain maximum shields," he ordered. "Prepare for impact." His tactical officer looked confused. "Sir, kinetic weapons have never been a serious threat to our barriers. Even at high velocities, the shields can absorb and redirect the kinetic energy." Kethvar nodded. The hegemony had faced kinetic weapons before. Primitive species sometimes used railguns or mass drivers. These weapons fired metal projectiles at maybe 1% of light speed. The quantum barriers easily handled such crude attacks by spreading the kinetic energy across multiple layers and dumping it into subspace. But 14% of light speed was different. That was faster than any kinetic weapon in recorded history. 30 seconds to impact, announced the sensor operator. Across the Zephyrian fleet, 200 ships waited behind their shimmering shields. Each vessel's barriers hummed with power, ready to deflect whatever the humans had thrown at them. 20 seconds. Kethvar watched the tactical display. The human projectiles were invisible to optical sensors, but they showed up clearly on mass detectors. 28 small objects racing toward his ships at unbelievable speed. 10 seconds. All ships report ready. Sir? His communications officer said. 5 seconds. Kethvar gripped his command chair. Whatever happened next, his shields would protect them. They had to. Impact. The first projectile struck the heavy cruiser Inevitable Justice. Kethvar expected to see the familiar sight of barriers absorbing the attack, energy spreading harmlessly across the shield matrix. Instead, the projectile punched straight through all 7 layers of quantum barriers like they were not even there. The tungsten slug, moving at 42,000 kilometers per second, hit the cruiser's hull with the force of a nuclear bomb. It vaporized 18 meters of composite armor in a microsecond. Secondary explosions rippled through the ship's interior as the projectile's kinetic energy turned everything in its path to plasma. Kethvar watched in horror as the Inevitable Justice broke apart. The ship that had survived the siege of Arcturus and the Battle of the Crimson Nebula was destroyed by a single metal rod traveling very fast. Impossible, he whispered. More impacts followed. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, shuddered as a projectile grazed their port side. The near miss vaporized their shield generator and left a glowing crater in the hull. Damage report, Kethvar shouted. Port shields are down, sir. Hull breach on decks 12 through 15. The projectile passed completely through our barriers. Kethvar's mind struggled to process what was happening. Their shields were designed to stop everything. Every energy weapon known to science could be deflected or absorbed. But these human weapons were not energy weapons at all. Sir, incoming transmission from the human admiral, his communications officer reported. Put her through. Admiral Chen appeared on the main screen again. Behind her, Kethvar could see the bridge of her ship. It still looked crude and functional, but now he noticed other details. The thick reinforcement beams, the heavy power cables, the massive support structures. Everything was built to handle enormous stress. Admiral Kethvar, Chen said calmly, I hope you're beginning to understand your situation. How? Kethvar demanded. How are your weapons penetrating our shields? Chen's expression remained serious. Because your shields are designed to stop energy weapons, Admiral. They deflect plasma and absorb particle beams, but they can't grab hold of solid matter moving at relativistic speeds, and that's impossible. Solid objects cannot reach such velocities, can't they? Chen gestured to someone off-screen. The display split to show a technical diagram. Electromagnetic linear accelerator. We call them railguns. The principle is simple. Use magnetic fields to accelerate a metal projectile down a long track. Give it enough power and a long enough barrel, and you can push a tungsten slug to significant fractions of light speed. Kethvar stared at the diagram. It was shockingly primitive. No exotic matter, no manipulation of space-time, just electromagnetism and basic physics. Your ships, he said slowly, they're built around these railguns. Every human warship is essentially a flying artillery piece, Chen confirmed. We learned long ago that the best way to solve most problems is to hit them with something heavy moving very fast. Another salvo erupted from the human fleet. This time, Kethvar could see the launching mechanism clearly. Massive electromagnetic rails ran the entire length of each human ship. Lightning danced along the rails as they fired, hurling tungsten penetrators with the energy output of a small power plant. You see, Admiral, Chen continued as another Zephyrian cruiser died in a ball of expanding plasma. Every other civilization in the galaxy made the same assumption. Advanced technology means energy weapons. Clean, efficient, precise. But humans never got that message. The Eternal Dominion shook again as fragments from a destroyed escort ship peppered their hull. We've been using kinetic weapons since we lived in caves, Chen said. Rocks, spears, arrows, bullets, artillery shells. When we reached space, we just scaled up the concept. Why change what works? Kethvar realized with growing dread that his entire military doctrine was useless. 3,000 years of technological advancement, focused entirely on stopping energy-based attacks. The most sophisticated defensive systems in the galaxy, completely helpless against chunks of metal moving really fast. All ships, he ordered desperately. Emergency retreat. Jump to hyperspace immediately. I'm afraid we can't allow that, Chen replied. On his tactical display, Kethvar saw the truth. The human ships had spread out during the battle, forming a perfect sphere around his fleet. Every escape vector was covered. You came here to conquer us, Admiral, Chen said. The least we can do is show you exactly why that was a mistake. The human railguns fired again. This time they targeted his ship's hyperspace drive. The human fleet moved with deadly precision. What Kethvar had first seen as crude flying boxes now revealed their true purpose. Every angle, every reinforcement beam, every thick hull plate was designed around the massive railguns that formed their spine. Sir, hyperspace drive is offline, reported his engineering officer. The projectile severed our main power coupling. We cannot jump to safety. Kethvar watched helplessly as his proud fleet was systematically dismantled. The humans were not firing randomly. Each shot was calculated with computer precision. They targeted shield generators first, stripping away his ship's defenses. Then they hit weapon systems, leaving his vessels helpless. Finally, they destroyed engines and hyperspace drives, trapping the Zephyrian fleet in normal space. How many ships have we lost? He asked quietly. His tactical officer checked the displays with shaking hands. 43 destroyed, sir. 67 disabled. The rest are trapped like us. 43 ships destroyed by primitive kinetic weapons. Kethvar had never imagined such a defeat was possible. The Hegemony fleet was the most powerful military force in this part of the galaxy. They had conquered hundreds of star systems. They had never lost a single major engagement. Sir, another transmission from the human admiral, his communications officer announced. Admiral Chen appeared on screen again. She was still standing calmly on her functional bridge, as if the complete destruction of a superior fleet was just another day's work. Admiral Kethvar, I think it's time we had a proper conversation, she said. But first let me explain exactly what you're facing. The display changed to show a cutaway view of a human warship. Kethvar could see the internal structure clearly. Most of the ship's interior was taken up by a single massive railgun. The electromagnetic rails ran from the bow to nearly the stern. Enormous capacitor banks lined the sides. Cooling systems snaked throughout the hull. Everything else was secondary to the weapon. This is the UES Defiance, Chen's voice continued. Our flagship is built around a Mark IX electromagnetic launcher. The rails are 800 meters long. The projectile starts at 0 velocity and exits the barrel at 15% of light speed. Kethvar stared at the technical readout. The numbers were staggering. The amount of energy required to accelerate 50 kilograms to such speed was enormous. The power systems alone should have been impossible on a ship that size. The projectile itself is simple, Chen explained. Tungsten rod, 50 kilograms with a depleted uranium core for extra mass. No explosives, no warhead. At relativistic speeds, kinetic energy alone is enough to vaporize anything it hits. Another diagram appeared, showing the physics of the impact. When a solid object moving at 40,000 kilometers per second hit another solid object, both were instantly converted to plasma. The energy release was comparable to a nuclear weapon. But the real secret, Chen said, is not the weapon itself. It's the philosophy behind it. The display changed again, showing a comparison between Zephyrian and human ship designs. The Zephyrian vessels were graceful and elegant, with smooth curves and artistic flourishes. The human ships looked like they had been built by engineers who cared only about function. You designed your ships to be beautiful and efficient, Chen observed. Plasma weapons are clean and precise. Particle beams are elegant solutions. Your shields are marvels of advanced physics. Everything about your military doctrine assumes that more advanced equals better. Kethvar felt his scales darken with shame. It was true. Zephyrian culture valued elegance and sophistication. Their weapons were as much art as warfare. They took pride in the complex mathematics behind their shield technology. Humans took a different approach, Chen continued. We never assumed that complicated was better. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. Hit the enemy with something heavy. Hit them hard. Hit them before they can hit you back. The human fleet continued its methodical destruction of his forces. But Kethvar noticed something important. They were targeting specific systems, not trying to kill his crews. His ships were being disabled, not destroyed, unless they continued to fight back. Your shields are impressive technology, Chen admitted. Quantum barriers that can deflect energy weapons are beyond our current understanding. But they have one fatal flaw. They assume the enemy will use energy weapons. Another technical diagram appeared showing how the Zephyrian shields worked. The quantum barriers created fields that could grab onto energy and redirect it. Plasma, particle beams, and fusion lances all interacted with the barriers in predictable ways. But kinetic weapons don't interact with energy fields, Chen explained. A solid object moving through space is just matter following Newton's laws. Your shields can't grab onto it because there's nothing for them to grab. The projectile just passes right through. Kethavar understood now. His civilization had spent thousands of years perfecting defenses against energy weapons. They had created shields that could stop anything that used exotic physics or advanced technology, but they had never considered that someone might use simple kinetic weapons at extreme velocities. The irony, Chen said with a slight smile, is that railguns are actually ancient technology by galactic standards. We've been using electromagnetic acceleration since the 21st century. The only difference is scale and power. She was right. The principle behind railguns was basic electromagnetism. Every advanced civilization knew how to generate magnetic fields. But they had all moved on to more sophisticated weapons. Only humans had continued developing kinetic systems. "Sir," his science officer said quietly, "our analysis confirms her explanation. The human weapons are primitive by our standards, but they exploit a gap in our defensive doctrine. Our shields cannot stop solid matter at those velocities." Kethavar closed his eyes. In a few hours, the most powerful fleet in hegemony space had been reduced to scrap by weapons that any civilization could build. The humans had not defeated him with superior technology. They had defeated him with superior thinking. "What do you want?" he asked Admiral Chen. "Right now, I want you to understand something very important," she replied. "Earth is not defenseless. Humanity is not primitive. We just solve problems differently than everyone else." The human ships had finished surrounding his fleet, 28 vessels against 200, and the 28 had won completely, not through superior numbers or advanced technology, but through simple physics applied with devastating effectiveness. "We could destroy every remaining ship in your fleet," Chen said matter-of-factly, "but that's not what we want. We want you to go home, Admiral Kethavar. We want you to tell your leaders exactly what happened here." Kethavar looked around his damaged bridge. His proud flagship was powerless, drifting in space. Half his fleet was destroyed or disabled. The other half was trapped with no hope of escape. "And what message should I deliver?" he asked bitterly. Chen's expression grew serious. "Tell them that humans don't want to conquer anyone. But we also won't be conquered. Tell them that the next time the hegemony decides to expand into human space, they should bring better shields." Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the tactical display as her fleet moved through the wreckage of the Zephyrian force. The battle was over, but the lesson was just beginning. "Ma'am, the alien admiral is requesting another communication," reported her communications officer. "Lieutenant Torres, put him through." Kethavar's image appeared on the main screen. The proud Zephyrian admiral looked broken. His scales had turned a dull gray color, and his eyes showed the confusion of someone whose entire worldview had collapsed. "Admiral Chen," he said slowly, "I need to understand. How did your species develop such weapons? Why did you not follow the same path as every other civilization?" Chen considered the question carefully. It was important that Kethavar understand not just what had happened, but why it had happened. "Admiral, let me tell you a story about human history," she began. "For thousands of years, humans lived on one world. We could not escape to space when our wars became too terrible. We had to find ways to fight each other using only the materials and energy available on our planet." She gestured to her tactical officer, who brought up a series of historical images on the display. Ancient human warriors with spears and shields, medieval knights in armor, modern soldiers with rifles and artillery. Every human weapon followed the same basic principle, Chen explained. Accelerate a projectile to high velocity and aim it at the enemy. The projectile might be an arrow, a bullet, or an artillery shell, but the concept never changed. Kethavar studied the images with growing understanding. "Your entire military tradition is based on kinetic weapons." "Exactly. When we finally reached space, we brought that tradition with us. Other species had energy weapons from the beginning of their space age. They never needed to perfect kinetic systems. But humans had been perfecting kinetic weapons for millennia." Chen brought up another display, showing the development of human space weapons. The first orbital railguns were crude affairs, barely capable of 1% light speed, but each generation improved on the last. "We had time," she said. 50 years trapped in one star system while we learned to build better ships. 50 years to perfect electromagnetic acceleration. 50 years to solve the engineering problems that other species never bothered with. The images showed the progression clearly. Early human ships carried small railguns as backup weapons. Later designs made the railgun the primary armament. The newest ships, like the Defiance, were built entirely around their kinetic weapons. "Your ships," Kethvar observed. "They are not beautiful by our standards." Chen laughed. "Beauty was never the point, Admiral. Function was the point. Every human warship is designed to do one thing extremely well: accelerate tungsten rods to high percentages of light speed and fire them accurately at enemy targets." She walked over to a window that showed the interior of her ship. Kethvar could see the massive electromagnetic rails that ran the length of the hull. Power conduits as thick as tree trunks fed energy to the weapon systems. Everything was built heavy and strong. "Zephyrian ships are works of art," Chen admitted. "Graceful lines, elegant curves, sophisticated technology. Our ships look like flying hammers because that's essentially what they are. Tools for hitting things very hard." "But the power requirements," Kethvar protested. "To accelerate 50 kilograms to 15% of light speed should require enormous energy." "It does." Chen brought up the power specifications for the Defiance. "Our main reactor produces 8 times more energy than ships of comparable size in other fleets. Most of that power goes directly to the railgun capacitors." The technical readout showed the true scale of human engineering. The fusion reactor took up nearly a quarter of the ship's interior. Massive capacitor banks stored enough energy to power a small city. Cooling systems prevented the rails from melting under the tremendous electromagnetic forces. "Your people built ships that could do many things well," Chen observed. "Fast travel, long-range sensors, comfortable crew quarters, elegant weapon systems. We built ships that could do one thing perfectly: kill other ships with kinetic energy." Kethvar was beginning to understand the deeper implications. "Your entire fleet doctrine is based on this philosophy." "Every human military doctrine is based on this philosophy," Chen corrected. "We don't fight fair. We don't fight elegantly. We fight to win using whatever advantages we can find." She brought up a tactical analysis of the recent battle. The human formation had been simple but effective. Instead of complex maneuvers or sophisticated tactics, they had relied on accurate fire and overwhelming kinetic force. Other species develop new weapons and then build tactics around them, Chen explained. Humans develop tactics and then build weapons to support them. Our tactic is simple: hit the enemy harder than they can hit us and hit them first. The display showed firing solutions calculated by the human computers. Every shot had been planned with mathematical precision, not just where to aim, but which systems to target for maximum tactical effect. "You did not try to destroy our entire fleet," Kethvar realized. "You disabled our ships selectively. Destruction was never the goal, Admiral. Victory was the goal. Dead enemies can't surrender. Dead enemies can't go home and warn their friends that attacking humans is a bad idea." Chen pulled up another technical diagram, this one showing the internal structure of a Zephyrian ship. She pointed to specific systems that the humans had targeted. Shield generators first, to strip away your defenses. Weapon systems second, to prevent return fire. Engines and hyperspace drives third, to prevent escape. We could have aimed for your command centers or reactor cores, but that would have served no purpose except killing your crews. Kethvar looked at the targeting analysis with professional admiration despite his defeat. The humans had fought with surgical precision, achieving maximum tactical effect with minimum casualties. "Your people," he said slowly. "They think like engineers, not artists." "Most of us are engineers," Chen replied with a slight smile. "Or farmers or miners or factory workers. People who solve practical problems with practical solutions. When we needed to defend ourselves in space, we approached it like any other engineering challenge." She gestured toward the viewport, where the disabled Zephyrian ships drifted in formation. "Your civilization has had thousands of years to perfect the art of warfare. Beautiful ships, elegant weapons, sophisticated tactics. But you forgot that war is ultimately about physics. Mass times velocity equals force. Force applied in the right place at the right time equals victory." Kethvar understood now why his defeat had been so complete. The hegemony had turned warfare into an art form, with rules and conventions and aesthetic considerations. Humans had kept warfare as a practical problem with practical solutions. "What happens now?" he asked. Chen's expression grew serious again. "Now you gather your surviving ships and return to hegemony space. You report to your superiors that Earth is defended and will remain defended. You tell them that any future aggression against human space will result in the complete destruction of the attacking force. And if they do not believe me, then they'll send a larger fleet and we'll destroy that one too. Admiral, the galaxy is about to learn a very important lesson about humanity. We don't start fights, but we finish them." 6 hours after the battle ended, Admiral Kethvar sat in a small conference room aboard the human flagship. The room was typical of human design: functional furniture, plain metal walls, and no decoration except for a single flag bearing the symbol of Earth. Across from him, Admiral Chen poured coffee from a simple metal pot. "Your crew quarters are surprisingly comfortable," Kethvar admitted. The humans had rescued him and his senior officers from their damaged ship and provided them with temporary quarters. "We believe in treating prisoners well," Chen replied, offering him a cup of the dark liquid. "Besides, you're not really prisoners. You're messengers." Kethvar accepted the coffee and tasted it carefully. The beverage was bitter but warming. "This is a human drink? One of our most important discoveries. Coffee keeps engineers awake during long projects." Chen smiled as she sat down. "Speaking of projects, let me show you something interesting." She activated a holographic display that showed detailed scans of the Zephyrian ships. Kethvar was surprised to see how thorough the human analysis had been. They had mapped every system, every component, every design feature. "Your shield technology is remarkable," Chen said with genuine admiration. "Quantum field manipulation, subspace energy redirection, multi-layered barrier generation. Our physicists are very impressed." "Then why do you seem so confident that you can defeat future hegemony attacks?" Kethvar asked. Chen brought up another display, this one showing human weapon designs. "Because we're already working on countermeasures. Our engineers have been studying your shield technology for the past 6 hours. They have some interesting ideas." The display showed several new projectile designs. Some were multi-stage penetrators that could punch through multiple barrier layers. Others were exotic matter warheads that could disrupt quantum fields. All were designed to be fired from electromagnetic railguns. "You see, Admiral, this is what humans do best. We find problems and we solve them. Your shields are a problem. Within a few months we'll have solutions." Kethvar studied the weapon designs with growing alarm. The humans had already identified weaknesses in hegemony technology that his own scientists had never considered. "But more importantly," Chen continued, "we've learned something crucial from this encounter. The galaxy has been making the same assumptions for thousands of years. Everyone believes that advanced technology equals energy weapons. Everyone builds defenses against energy weapons. Everyone follows the same tactical doctrines." She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the drifting Zephyrian ships. "Humans don't make those assumptions. We question everything. We test everything. We build our military around proven principles, not elegant theories." "What principles?" Kethvar asked. "Simple ones. Hit the enemy harder than they can hit you. Strike first when possible. Use overwhelming force to end conflicts quickly. Adapt faster than your opponents can respond." Chen turned back to face him. "These aren't sophisticated concepts, Admiral. They're basic military doctrine that humans have followed for thousands of years." The holographic display changed to show a map of local space. Human territory was a small blue sphere around Earth. Hegemony space was a vast red area covering hundreds of star systems. "Your civilization controls a significant portion of this galactic sector," Chen observed. "Hundreds of worlds, billions of citizens, the most advanced technology in known space. Earth is one small planet with a few orbital facilities and some mining operations in our outer system." "Then how can you be so confident?" Kethvar demanded. Chen smiled. "Because size isn't everything. The hegemony is vast and powerful, but it's also predictable. You follow established patterns. You use conventional tactics. You rely on technological superiority." She highlighted several star systems on the map. "These are strategic choke points between hegemony space and Earth. If your leaders decide to send another fleet, they'll have to come through one of these systems. We'll be waiting. You would fight a defensive war? We'd fight the kind of war that gives us the best chance of winning. Humans learned long ago that sometimes the best defense is making the enemy afraid to attack." Kethvar began to understand the broader implications. The humans weren't just defending Earth. They were changing the balance of power in the entire sector. Your railgun technology, he said slowly. Other species could develop it. They could, Chen agreed. The physics isn't complicated. Electromagnetic acceleration is basic science that any spacefaring civilization should understand, but most species won't bother. Why not? Because it's not elegant. It's not sophisticated. It requires brute force engineering and enormous power systems. Most civilizations prefer clean, efficient energy weapons. Chen sat back down. But some species will pay attention to what happened here. They'll realize that maybe the conventional approach isn't the only approach. The implications were staggering. If other civilizations began developing kinetic weapons, the entire military balance of the galaxy would shift. Advanced shield technology would become less important. Defensive strategies would need complete revision. You're going to destabilize the entire galactic order, Kethvar realized. We're going to introduce competition, Chen corrected. For thousands of years, military technology has followed predictable paths. Energy weapons and energy defenses. Complex tactics and sophisticated equipment. Everyone playing by the same rules. She gestured toward the viewport again. Humans don't play by those rules. We'll force everyone else to reconsider their assumptions. Some civilizations will adapt. Others will fall behind. The galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place. Kethvar finished his coffee and set down the cup. My superiors will not accept this situation. The hegemony has never been successfully challenged. Then they'll send more fleets. Bigger fleets. Better equipped fleets. Chen's expression remained calm. And we'll destroy those too. Eventually, they'll realize that the cost of conquering Earth exceeds any possible benefit. You sound very confident for someone commanding only 28 ships. Admiral, let me tell you something about human industrial capacity. Chen brought up another display. This one showing Earth's orbital shipyards. We've been building ships for 50 years. Most of them are cargo vessels and mining platforms. But the same techniques that build cargo ships can build warships. The display showed construction schedules that made Kethvar's scales pale. The humans were planning to build hundreds of railgun-equipped vessels over the next few years. Every human ship will be armed, Chen explained. Cargo vessels will carry defensive railguns. Mining platforms will mount heavy kinetic weapons. Passenger liners will have point defense systems. We're not just building a navy, Admiral. We're militarizing our entire space infrastructure. Kethvar understood the true scope of what he was facing. The humans weren't just defending Earth with their current fleet. They were preparing for a long war against any enemy who threatened them. When do my people and I leave? He asked quietly. Tomorrow morning. We're providing you with a fast courier ship and enough supplies to reach hegemony space. You'll also carry complete recordings of this engagement and technical data on our weapons. You want the hegemony to understand what they're facing. We want them to make an informed decision about whether to continue this conflict. Chen stood and extended her hand in the human gesture of farewell. Tell your leaders that Earth is willing to coexist peacefully with the hegemony. But also tell them that we're prepared to defend ourselves against any aggression. Kethvar shook her hand, noting the firm grip and steady gaze. What if they choose war anyway? Chen's smile was not entirely pleasant. Then the galaxy will learn why humans spent so many centuries perfecting the art of killing each other. We're very good at it, Admiral. Very good indeed.